Papua New Guinea. It's the little orange country right above Australia. And so I was there. We were training and equipping pastors and how do they frame having a healthy church. And so it was a beautiful time. Actually, we got there, we got off the plane, and guess what happened? We were uninvited. This is true. We were uninvited. They said, because we had this workshop ready to go for 3 days with all these pastors. So they said between 20 to 40 pastors. And so we're really excited. We got off the plane and they said, everything's canceled, sorry. And we said, what do we do? And we prayed, and Peter called a friend. There's a university just outside Port Moresby that said, why don't you come and spend a week with us? So we did that, and instead of dealing with 20 to 40 pastors, we had a minimum of 120 at all of our sessions. And it was almost, do you know that that's what God does in this world today? Like, he takes this little thing and he just multiplies it, and you think, oh my gosh, it's all going to die, and yet God just multiplies and does something crazy with it. So it was a beautiful time. Let me show you some pictures. So this is me in a farmer's market, and this is up when we climbed up a mountain. So it was 95 degrees and like 98% humidity. And we climbed up with these guys. They had a national holiday on Thursday, so it was our day off. So we climbed this mountain together, and it was this moment where, you ever have those moments where God shows up in your life? So we just sang a song up on this mountain, and just a whole bunch of guys. And it was like God's presence just visited. It was a beautiful kingdom moment. And then afterwards, this is what most of our sessions look like. That gives you an idea. We were in 3 different rooms, but this is the main room that we were in. And it was just an amazing, amazing time. Papua New Guinea has it's a really unique nation because they have over 1,000 cultural groups. Out of that, you have 850 different languages spoken. Crazy, 850 different languages. And so did you know that last year, Papua New Guinea made Christianity its official religion in their constitution? There's so much renewal and revival with the Christian church there that, no joke, one small group in Papua New Guinea baptized 300,000 last year. It's crazy. Like, God's doing all kinds of beautiful, crazy things. And maybe for those animal lovers, we were up on that mountain and I saw a wallaby jumping across the way. I'm like, it's a little mini kangaroo type thing. Super fun. So anyway, thank you for praying for me. It was amazing, amazing. But to be really honest, it's really good to be back. It's good to go, and it's really, really good to get home. So we're in the middle of a series called Flip, the Upside Down Kingdom, which we'll jump into. One of the things I wanted to point out in your communicator, something that you're not going to see in here that historically has been in here, is our spring festival. And so at this point, we have officially, with finances being tight, we said that we're going to be good stewards and we're going to cancel this event. So, but we are going to have all kinds of other things for you, including right after Easter, we're going to have our all-church picnic, the John Egan Memorial, and we're going to really push into our interactive reflections of the cross on Good Friday this year. We're going to open that up and use that as an opportunity to invite people to our church community as well as Easter Sunday. So that's what's happening there. Come talk to me or the rest of the staff if you have questions. And so as we dive into this concept of flipped, where I'm going this morning is difficult. It's not a simple sermon. And last Sunday, I was in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, and 2 young men, I was eating with them at a restaurant, and they said, John, this is actually on the way to the restaurant. They're like, John, did you know that America's at war? And I said, what? And all of a sudden, my brain, I had to go do a Google search and figure out what was going on. And so I kind of diverted. I said, okay, let's move in this direction today. And so today I want to talk about something that is probably in the top 5 things, the most difficult things Jesus ever said. Most difficult. And so today I want to talk about how do we love our enemies? How do we love our enemies? So we're in the series called Flip. The central idea is that Jesus didn't come to improve the kingdoms of this world. He came to replace them with something brand new, his upside down kingdom. And if you could, and I refer to this a lot, but imagine the kingdoms of this world, if this is a globe, the kingdoms of this world work a certain way. They work this way. Jesus came and said, that's not my kingdom. My kingdom actually looks a lot more like, flip that upside down and it looks like this. So when we're talking about the kingdom of God, we're talking about the rule and the reign of God. When the rule and reign of God is among God's people, it transforms and renews this world. And it doesn't look like the kingdoms of this world. It looks like this. And so we've been discovering over the series what that looks like, this upside down kingdom. So each week we're asking the question, what does it look like when Jesus flipped the script? And all of a sudden you have this new kingdom, the rule and reign of God. What does it look like? So there was a man who was shipwrecked on a desert island, completely alone, all by himself for year after year after year. The rescue ship, after years, finally arrived, and the captain of the ship noticed 3 structures on the beach. And so the captain asked the man, what's that first building? And the man said, that's my house. Then the captain said, what's the second building? And he said, that's the church where I worship every Sunday. And what's the third one, the captain asked. The man's jaw tightened. He became red and he said, that's the church I used to go to. It's okay. Can I just say, even on a desert island with nobody else around, we still manage to have enemies? Like all by ourselves, and we have our own enemies. We're wired for conflict. We're wired to divide the world into us and them, friends and enemies. And you don't have to look very far to feel this today. The world right now is at war, real wars with real people dying, even here at home, in our culture, in our politics, in our social media feeds. The temperature of hostility, have you noticed? It keeps rising and rising and rising. Have you noticed that? It's been exponential over the last couple of years. It's been crazy. We are drowning in enemies. Real ones, perceived ones, old ones, new ones. And the question the world is asking, the only question the world knows to ask is this question: how do I defeat my enemy? That's the question. Jesus asked a completely different question than this. A completely different question. Be honest for a moment. Think about somebody who's hurt you. A person who's betrayed your trust, someone who talked behind your back, a family member who wounded you deeply, a colleague who undermined you, someone who walked away and you felt the damage of the wake of that situation in their life. What's your honest, gut level response to that person? If you're like most people, if you're like me, it isn't love. It isn't love. It's distance. It's cold indifference. It's quiet resentment. And maybe if we're real honest, it's a small secret hope that things don't go too well for them in the future. That's the most natural, human, deeply wired response in the world. And then Jesus opens his mouth. Matthew 5, if you've got your Bibles, turn there, or turn on your phone to Matthew 5, starting in verse 43. And you have heard the law that says, love your neighbor, Jesus said, and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven, for he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. Verse 46. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. And I think at that moment he winked at Matthew, who was a former tax collector. And then he goes on, if you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. When Jesus said this, the crowd wasn't made up of comfortable, well-fed Southern Californians. No, these are Jewish people living under Roman occupation. Rome wasn't a benevolent overlord. Rome taxed the poor into poverty. They conscripted their labor. They crucified the rebels and made it very clear who was in charge. Because the word enemy was not abstract to them. Their enemy had a face. It had a uniform. It had boots that marched in their streets. And the religious culture of the day actually had developed what we call a theology of hatred. The phrase, hate your enemy, when Jesus said that phrase, hate your enemy, Jesus wasn't making something up. It was a real teaching found in Jewish groups of Jesus' day, which explicitly called for loving the members of your community and hating them, and hating them, and hating them. We're called to, we love us, and we hate, and we hate, and we hate. And we see this in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Community Rule 1QS. This is the Essenes writing 100 years before Jesus. And that's where this all stemmed from. So we know that there is this theology of hatred. Love those close to you and hate them and hate them and hate them. And Jesus enters this world and says, no, my kingdom looks like this. It looks different. It does not look like the systems and structures of this world. So when Jesus says, but I say to you, love your enemies, this isn't a general suggestion. It's a declaration of war against every assumption about how power, justice, relationships work. Every earthly kingdom, then and now, runs on the same operating system. You hurt me, I hurt you back. You threaten me, I neutralize you. You're my enemy, I defeat you, or I completely avoid you. That's the systems of this world. And Jesus looked at the operating system of this world and said, that's not my kingdom. That's not my rule and reign. It looks different. The Roman Empire was the most sophisticated military and political machine the ancient world ever produced. They conquered through superior force, intimidation, and retaliation. Cross Rome, and Rome crushed you. That was the deal. And yet within 300 years of Jesus speaking these words on a hillside in Galilee, Christianity had spread to every corner of the Roman Empire. Not through armies, not through political power, through people who loved their enemies. Wow. The historian Tertullian, he wrote that, and just so you know, he's a non-Christian historian, Tertullian. He wrote that the Romans would observe Christians and say in astonishment, see how they love? See how they love? And for a historian from outside of Christianity to look upon the Christian community and say, see how they love? Their love looks different. It's not like the rest of, we like our friendships and we like our family and we hate and hate and hate. See how they love. Those Christians, see how they love. You guys, the most dangerous idea in the Roman world wasn't a new weapon. It was a new way of treating people who hated you. So let's look carefully at what Jesus actually said here, because there's some specific things that Jesus calls you and I to do. The first one is, when you read this text, this is the first one that it hits you like a bat. Like, yeah, 2x4 across the face, right? And so Jesus says, love your enemies. Wow. The Greek word here is agape, your enemies. It's the same word that John uses in John 3:16, for God so loved the world, agape the world. This isn't philia, warm friendship love. It's not eros, romantic feelings. It's not storge, family love. Agape is a chosen, active, unconditional orientation toward the good of another person. Wow. Jesus isn't asking you to feel warm feelings towards your enemy. He's asking you to choose their good. That's a massive distinction. Feelings follow actions, not the other way around. Jesus goes on and he says, pray for those who persecute you. Now, this is the most practical thing Jesus actually says in this text, in this passage. You can't genuinely pray for someone and maintain a posture of hate towards them in your heart. Have you noticed that? You start praying for somebody and something inside starts to move in their direction, starts to warm up a little bit. And so this is the most practical thing. Prayer is a spiritual practice that actually does something in us when it comes to our enemies. It does something in us, and it does something externally, but it also does something deeply profound in us. Verse 46 says, if you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even the corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anybody else? Jesus doesn't just command enemy love. He exposes the bankruptcy of the alternative. Loving your friends. Even the corrupt tax collectors do that. There's nothing countercultural. There's nothing kingdom-shaped about loving all the people that love you right back. That's just like the way the world works. Jesus is saying love's got to go beyond that. Love's got to go to those people that aren't close to us, the other over there that's not near us, or our own clan or our own tribe. And then he says this, which this is the second part for me that was like a pain point. But he says, but you are to be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And I've looked into this. This is a more difficult one. But the word perfect is teleos in the Greek. And it means something specific. It means complete, whole, mature, fully developed. So this is not a call for the church to have sinless perfection. It's a call to become fully what God's designed you to be. And that includes radical, indiscriminate, enemy-including love that Jesus is talking about here. Okay? Now, I have to be honest with you. This teaching isn't something that I've mastered. Okay? There have been people in my life who have hurt me deeply and profoundly, people that I've trusted, and my honest first response is not agape love. It's a very far away from agape love. Brent was a good friend of mine. He's a leader in my church. I went camping. He and I went camping with our kids when our kids were little. We had board game nights together. And then betrayal. I remember a season where I had to make a choice. Hold on resentment or actually pray for Brent. Do I hold on to this resentment or do I pray for him? Not pray that God would deal with him and justice would come swiftly, but genuinely pray for his good. I remember that moment. Do I hold on this resentment or do I pray for his good? And I started praying for him mechanically. Have you ever done something like mechanically? I started doing it mechanically, just words. I didn't feel it at all. But something started to shift. in me. Not him. I have no idea what happened in him. But in me, something started to shift. The grip of resentment loosened. The story I was telling myself about him started to become more complicated, more human. I started to see him differently. I started to see him maybe the way God saw him. Broken, hurting, doing damage out of his own damage. I'm praying for his good. Well, that's why we're called to pray for our enemies here. Yeah, we're called to pray for our enemies, and we're called to pray for their good. Dallas Willard said this: you can only love your enemy when you see them the way God sees them. Crazy. So let me tell you a story about Papua New Guinea, okay, since I was just there, of enemy love and this working out in their tribal system. So just so you know, when I talk about tribes in Papua New Guinea, we're not talking a tribe of 20 people. We're talking a tribe of 1,000 over here and 1,000 over there, okay? And so Don Richardson, he wrote a great book called Peace Child. I actually saw Don speak when I was in college. Don Richardson worked with 2 tribes in Papua New Guinea that were cannibalistic. They were locked in deep generational hostility. These weren't just rivals, they were true enemies. And so he was working with this tribe and working with that tribe, but he saw in their culture, things were different. Things were very different in their culture. And he started sharing the Jesus story. And as he started to share the Jesus story, something unexpected happened. The tribe was not moved by Jesus and Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. They were captivated by Judas. This is true. Now, hold on. So in their culture, the highest honor went to the man who would win somebody's trust and then betray them. So fatten up a victim with friendship before killing and eating them, basically. It's true. So Judas wasn't the villain in the story. Judas is the hero. And Don's like, what do I do? Like, I've shared the story of Jesus, and they think that Judas is the hero. And then something happened. He observed and was praying, and he watched one day a man from this tribe that had a newborn baby boy. And they took this newborn baby boy in his hands. His wife walked slowly behind him, and they went to this tribe with their baby boy. And they took their baby boy reluctantly and gave the other tribe their baby boy. Completely, like the baby boy, and then he backed away and went back to his own tribe. Crazy. Into the hands of his enemy. Okay, so he's there, and all of a sudden, Don said, what just happened? And they said, that baby is called the Peace Child. And as we gave the baby to that other, as long as that baby stays alive, we know that there is going to be peace between the 2 tribes. We know that they are caring and loving, and they're even taking the baby of an enemy and raising that baby as their own. And so the father was saying, I'm giving you what's most precious to me, not as a weapon, but as a bridge. And Don watched this happen. And here's what Don said. So the missionary said, he said, God looked at a world of enemies, and he walked out into the space between. He placed his own son into our arms. Jesus is God's peace child. And all of a sudden, when he told the 2 tribes, Jesus is the peace child that was given to us, and we crucified him on a cross, all of a sudden they said, oh, Judas is not the hero. because they all knew that they were going to war between the two tribes if the peace child died. They understood the two groups had every reason to remain enemies, but they experienced reconciliation and enemy love. Not because the hatred wasn't real, but because someone loved first with great cost without waiting to be loved back. That's agape. That's agape. God didn't wait for us to stop being his enemies. He crossed the dividing line, and guess what? And now he asks us, his kingdom people, to do the same thing. That's what the upside-down kingdom looks like. That's what it looks like in action. It's what agape looks like in the real world. But here's what nobody tells you about enemy love. It costs you something. It always costs you something. It cost Jesus his death on the cross. It always costs us something. John Wimber said this. He said, faith is spelled. Oh, by the way, here's Don Richardson. Faith is spelled R-I-S-K. And loving your enemy is the riskiest act of faith you will ever take. You risk being rejected again. You risk looking weak. You risk losing and being misunderstood. But here's why it matters beyond your personal relationships. Because there's a world watching the church right now. There's a world watching the church right now, especially people who have been burned by the church. And they've seen enough Christians who love their friends and despise their enemies. They've seen enough of the church baptizing the culture's hatred in Jesus' name. The world sees that and says, what? They're just like us. There's no upside-down kingdom present. They're just operating under the same system we are. What would it look like for the church of Jesus to become genuinely known for this? For the way we treat people who treat us the very worst. Jesus said it plainly. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. Enemy love isn't one option among many in the kingdom of God. It's our family resemblance. It's how people know whose children we are. We belong to God. We're his children. That's how people know. Things like enemy love. So I want to do something right now. And if you don't mind playing along, I would love that. If you don't mind just closing your eyes just for a moment. And if you don't have to close your eyes, but if you could just help us out right now in this moment as a church. I don't want to just talk about this. Would you just close your eyes for a moment and think of one person who's hurt you? One person who you would call an enemy or the closest thing to it. Don't force the feeling. Just bring their face to mind. Now I want you to try something. Just as a first step, say silently in your heart one simple prayer for them. Not a complicated prayer, just something like, God bless them. God, I can't do this on my own. God, I'm willing to try. Jesus, help me. Just not a complicated prayer, just whatever that simple thing is. That's it. That's the beginning of the upside-down kingdom taking root in your life in a whole brand new way. That's it. That's it. So let me give you a couple calls to action today. Number one, name your enemy. This week, identify one person who you've been holding resentment towards, consciously or unconsciously, and write down their name. This isn't an obsession over them, it's to get specific. Vague resentment is harder to address than a named one. So write their name down, okay? That's the first thing. Number two, pray for them once a day for 7 days. not for God to change them for your benefit. Pray for their genuine well-being, their good, their family, their struggles, their soul. Don't wait until you feel it. Do it mechanically if you have to, and watch what happens over those 7 days as you begin to pray for them. And number 3, take one step toward them. This doesn't mean you need to restore a dangerous relationship or pretend that harm didn't happen. But ask the Holy Spirit, is there one small act, a text, a prayer on their behalf, or releasing a debt in your heart that would be a step towards agape love this week? Faith is spelled R-I-S-K.